Okay, Andrew, we good?
We're good. It's your floor. This is an exciting day, Jim. So take it away.
Yes, it is. So I'm going to share my screen. Everyone, welcome to our special edition of the SASE call today, SASE MSP call. So we'll get into it. Most of today is really going to be dedicated to the reveal of App Wizard. So with that, we do have some other things we can cover, but for those that are not familiar with this call, this is a weekly call that we do. Andrew Morgan moderates it, which makes it way better. And it's where we can get together as a community, talk through best practices generally. Today's special because we're releasing App Wizard, which is more than 2 years in the making. But, you know, just so you all know, we like to let people know why we exist as an organization. And this is something we talk about internally as an organization and then obviously externally as well. So we believe there is a transition underway in cybersecurity from an on-premise and device-centric to a user behavior and account-centric approach. And SaaS Alerts helps MSPs win on this transition. So this guides everything that we do as an organization. Um, Today's agenda, we'll just give a quick update on where we are with SaaS Alerts, talk quickly about why this call is so important. Then we're going to get into App Wizard, the use cases, and the new opportunities that are available to you because of App Wizard from a revenue standpoint. Leron's going to come in and he's going to do his piece on App Wizard and actually show you what's been done. Then we'll go through the pricing model and then talk about what the I Want My SaaS Alerts campaign is all about. So, in terms of an update, and for those that, again, we usually have about 60 people on this call. Today, we now have 147. So, there is a lot of people on the call that usually aren't on. Uh, for SaaS Alerts, we're now up to 900 MSPs and about 1.8 million accounts protected. We have visibility to about 500,000 new users over the next 90 days. The pipeline is massive. And I think it's because people truly have come to understand how important protecting applications like Microsoft 365, how important that actually is. And then our net retention is 188%. I say all of this to thank you. You are our community. We've got several early adopters on this call. We wouldn't be where we are today without all of you. So we really appreciate all of your support. So thank you. As I mentioned before, every Thursday at 1 o'clock, we have this call, SaaS MSP call. This is all about learning from each other and collaborating. If you're not on this call on a regular basis, we believe that's worth your while. Again, I usually don't run it. Andrew Morgan runs it again, which makes it so much better. If you want to be part of this community, just ask your account manager here at SaaS Alerts, and we'll make sure that it gets on your calendar. So when we started SaaS Alerts, going back, we went GA on the software January 21st of 2021. We had one module. It was managed. Today we have three modules, and we have a lot of functionality, a lot of additional functionality in each one of those modules. So in August, you may remember that we released Fortify. Previous to that, in April, we released Unify. And today, we're releasing App Wizard. App Wizard is functionality that will live inside of Manage. And we as an organization have been planning for and putting together now for the better part of 2 years. And we believe it's the next frontier for the MSP community. The other two modules are report and respond. So report obviously gives you all of the information you need to convey the value that you provide to your customers, and then respond, obviously, to automated remediation, which is another module that really sets us apart in the marketplace. So when we started in January 21, we started with these applications minus Slack. And we obviously didn't have any of the MSP tools in there either, like all of the RMMs that we now support, IT Glue, more to come there. But imagine from an end user perspective, end user application perspective, imagine going from this to this. This is what App Wizard is all about. So App Wizard allows you, the MSP, to connect to almost any SaaS, third-party SaaS application with a viable API. Leron's going to go through what that process looks like, but imagine the power of that. What we care about, again, going back to why we exist, we track the user. We care about what the user does. We've been conditioned for good reason in this industry for a long time to always look at devices. But as end users, we can jump on any device, anytime into our applications. So if you had to pick one or the other, what's more important, following the user has become more important. So we care about who's logging in, where people are logging in from, what data they're looking at, and ultimately what data they're extracting or deleting. By doing this for your customers on additional third-party applications, and then being able to correlate it back to their productivity app, whether it be 365 or Google Workspace, is the power that we've always wanted to put into your hands. So we believe this is the next frontier for the MSP community. Not only from a protection standpoint, but from a revenue standpoint. So let's just say you have 100 customers, and you're able to go to those 100 customers and say, let's pick out one additional application outside of 365 that's important to your organization. And then you're able to charge that customer an additional $200 for that application on a per monthly basis. If you're able to do that for all 100 customers, that's $20,000 in incremental monthly recurring revenue. And because we're releasing this today to only partners, by the way, I'm talking to only partners on this call, people that have signed up with us in the past, someone that has an agreement with us, your cost is zero because you have an agreement with us today. This is included in your existing agreement. You are not paying incremental dollars to us for App Wizard today. So every dollar that you're able to sell and collect because of App Wizard is pure profit. Now, we'll go through the model later. That is not the case for people that are signing up January 1. So again, we're giving you a distinct advantage in the marketplace specific to App Wizard and your competition. So we've always taken the approach that when we release something big and something new, we take it to this community first. Because you've earned that right. You've earned the right to see it first. That's how we feel about all of you. So with all that said, I'm now going to hand it over to Leron Barron, who's actually going to get into the nuts and bolts of App Wizard and why you should be so excited.
All right, thank you, Jim. So when Jim first got started on day one, him and I talked about connecting to hundreds of different applications, as was shown in kind of the previous slide. And I was going on and on about technical details, and Jim just looks at me and goes, yeah, that's going to be called App Wizard, right? And then I talked to Chip about this, and him and I were just talking about how hard this was going to be to actually get this done. So today we're very excited to share with you a project that we started just over a year ago, as far as like the development work. Right, and the goal is to drastically accelerate our ability to add new applications for SaaS Alerts monitoring. As Jim said, right, we've long recognized that bad actors can do harm in any mission-critical SaaS application. And MSPs need to know if somebody logged into your client's industrial control application, an EMR, or an accounting application, because you're probably going to learn about a potential compromise one way or another. And it just really comes down to timing. So to limit the damage, the earlier we detect this, the better. And we've had multiple partners on this call tell us about how they're able to find issues in a matter of minutes in some cases, or days. And I actually looked into this today. According to the IBM breach data, the average time to identify a breach in 2023 is 204 days, right? So that's almost 7 months. And so we're talking about 7 months versus a matter of days. And for organizations with fewer than 500 employees, according to that report, the average impact from a dollar standpoint is $3.31 million. So your client, I think, expects you to know this information, and they'd be happy to pay for it. So right, this slide here, this is what AppWizard is. AppWizard is a new integration architecture, which we can't share for obvious reasons, because it's highly proprietary, it's highly secretive, and it's designed to swiftly integrate with a viable API. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thanks. All right, so what is a viable API? Once we get started, it'll take us 3 business days, and it is a REST API with a standard authentication mechanism. So that's the first requirement. The second requirement is that the data that we want exists. In most cases, we want syslog data, right? So user logged in, user downloaded a file, things like that. But we're not limited to that. We've had partners ask us for AWS logging data, specific special information stored in Azure cloud. And because we built it in such a way, we should be able to connect to those services and get that data out very, very quickly. And then lastly, the viability is determined by our engineering team. And what we're aiming to do in that 3 business day period is to generate a singular event, predominantly an auth success event or a login event, with the ability to quickly add on additional events to follow. So let's talk a little bit about our first integration. So when SaaS Alerts was initially founded, the team built each integration independently. So it took 12 months to create Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, and Dropbox, and we had about 25 events. And given that experience, we have learned a lot, and we've taken all those lessons, and we've built AppWizard, which takes what was previously measured in months and cuts it down to days. So Okta is the first AppWizard integration, and it's the model that helped us automate, standardize, and optimize the process to build a viable integration in 3 days. So I'm going to go and I'm going to connect to Okta, and I'm going to warn you, it's going to be a little bit boring, which is kind of the point, right? Because in cybersecurity, we like boring. Boring is the ultimate goal. It's what we're going for. We're going for business as usual. We're going for smooth sailing. So let's go and let's connect to Okta. So Jim, I'm going to take, thank you. All right, so I am logged into our dev environment, which is kind of like the wild, wild west as far as what happens in there. And I'm going to go create an organization, add it to all my groups. I'm going to whitelist the United States. And this is not available in production yet, just to be clear. So I'm going to see Okta here. I'm going to select Okta. And now I'm going to fill this information. So we're going to have a help article here that spells out how to get this information. So I'm going to put in the client ID, put in the client secret. And finish. Oh, I'm gonna have to it. All right. So the Okta connection is done. Gonna go next. Finish. So as you guys know, this is my test one. It's going to take a few minutes to go ahead for this information to populate. So while that is populating and we're waiting for the API to go to Okta and fetch the information, I'm going to quickly go over the procedure. And just to kind of remind you, it used to take months to do this. Now we've condensed it down to 3 days. So let's take a look at the procedure for requesting new App Wizard integrations. So the MSP, let's say you want to connect with the Orca application. Obviously, this is just a generic made-up application. You're going to contact your account manager. The account manager is going to explain to you what Jim and I have been saying, which is viable API, 3 business days once we get started, generating 1 event, additional events to follow. Once we start doing this and we start building some muscles around this, I expect this to go up a little bit. But for now, we're going to go ahead and limit it to an auth success event in a syslog type of situation. And the viability of an API does need to be determined by our team. So once that happens, we have a procedure internally where it's going to end up on a backlog. And that backlog is going to be reviewed by our team, which consists of iSpan, Viper, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then once we've decided this is the integration that we're going to be working on, it's going to go into an internal analysis team that will assess the API for viability, both at the technical level and at the data level. And this is the point where we start the clock. So we also have this kind of sandbox icon here, because when I talked to Adam about this yesterday, and he's done quite a few of these, he mentioned how we need the ability to get ideally production data, because the sandbox data that we get just isn't good enough. So we're going to have to work with our MSP partners to try to access and get data as quickly as possible. We're going to determine the viability from the technical. Can we connect to the API? Does it have the data that we want? If the answer to that question is yes, it's going to go to our development team. Our development team is going to do their work in that 3-day timeline. Then it's going to go to App Wizard and appear in SaaS Alerts. And at that point, your account manager will communicate with you and let you know that, hey, that integration that you asked for has been completed. Our marketing team will get the messages out and we will discuss it in the SaaS call as well. So new integrations, right? If you are interested in getting an integration, go ahead and contact your account manager right now after this call, tomorrow. And the new integration work is going to be starting in mid-January. So having said that, I am going to go back to the application. And this is the integration that I just did. Notice we have our 7 users. Here they are. Let's go in there and look at the data. So I'm simply filtering for Okta data, and you will see that we have Carly, who about 20 minutes ago logged in from outside of an approved location from Okta. All right, so that's really it, right? We just connect to Okta, we get the data out, but the power here lies in you, the MSP, reaching out to your account manager and saying, hey, I need to integrate with this new application. I see revenue potential here. All right, that's it. Back to you, Jim.
Now, it just so happens, right, that Okta has been in the news recently for their breach of their support. And I think any one of your clients that's using Okta today would appreciate you going to them and saying, hey, look, based on what's going on at Okta, we now have the ability to manage that. We now have the ability, I should say, to monitor that and better secure it. I don't know any organization out there that would turn that down right now that's using Okta, that's invested in using that. So again, this highlights the opportunity that you now have in front of you to be able to leverage it for additional revenue. So just continuing with the presentation here, just got a few more things to review, and maybe one of the most important things that we need your help on, right, is you heard Liron talk a lot about viability of an API. So there's a lot of great applications out there that actually don't have security log data in it, which means it's not viable for us to monitor. So we're starting a campaign. I want my SaaS Alerts campaign. Alerts, small a, it's not saying that I just want SaaS Alerts per se, although that would be nice. We want SaaS alerting data in APIs from software companies so you, us, the community, can better protect our users. So our goal is to get 2,500 signatures from MSPs between now and March 8th. Andrew Morgan, what happens March 8th?
Well, I'm starting to be depressed because it's the end of Right of Boom.
It's a right of boom. Exactly. So we were coinciding the end of the campaign with right of boom, because we know that if we're short some signatures, we'll be promoting it there, and everyone at that event, because it's the best cybersecurity focused event for MSPs, will be there to support it and sign it. So that's why we're basically going from now until March 8th. The goal is then to take that petition that represents 2,500 MSPs and roughly 250,000 small businesses around the world, go to these large leading software companies like an Intuit, by the way, who I think we'd all love the ability to monitor QuickBooks Online, but even though they have an API, they don't put any security log data in there for us to read. So we will be presenting this petition to a company like Intuit, trying to get them to actually put the right data in their API so we can protect it as a community, protect your users. That's the goal of the I Want My SaaS Alerts campaign. Andy, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I had a question. When Leon was going through this, for a given type of alert, what are we able to apply the same functions to an equivalent event in an app wizard application that we could with a Microsoft application? In other words, we can check for where the IP is coming from as long as that content's there. All the flexibility and operations that we could perform is what I'm asking, or is that still limited?
So I'll take that one, Liron. So Andy, our goal is with the petition is actually to offer to SaaS application vendors who don't currently have security monitoring, syslog monitoring for security events, a standard by which, hey, if you do these 10 things across these 3 categories, and by the way, those are not random numbers, we've developed, the basics. Like, this is a minimum viable API from a security logging standpoint. And if you do that, we can provide most of the functionality that you see today in SaaS Alerts from Microsoft or Google Workspace. Now, obviously, Microsoft has an unbelievably dense and rich Graph API and syslogging. So there are always going to be things that we can get out of Microsoft that you're not going to get out of other products. So for instance, DLP alerts that are coming from somebody who has Microsoft DLP licensing, you're not likely to get the equivalent of that in, some third-party app that only has an audience of a few 100,000 users. But the core stuff that you've become accustomed to, in the identity access management, in the policy and configuration controls, and in file and data sharing, we expect to be able to get from any application. That really is what makes it a viable API, is that there are access to those categories if they're available. And we'll further correlate those events with the primary productivity suite account, meaning your Andy Rowe at Microsoft.com or at 365 will still use the cross correlations for what that account does with the third-party account, and give you things like a possible travel and other elements that we do today between apps.
So I wanted to make sure I'm hearing this clearly, that Respond could be applied to a viable API if it meets this 10x3 standard for logging events, and that I could say disable that account potentially in the if they had that in the API. I could use Unify to map the viable API and the RMM managed device. I could link it to a device and say it only runs on this device. Yes. And I could use Fortify to potentially set policy. Now, see, that would be the piece here, right? But that's probably a year out, so I'll let that be.
Yeah, but even responding, if you think about it, the capability of making changes to any product is dependent upon that product having API functionality that allows it to do it. So, let's just take for instance, pick something out of the gate just for the fun of it. Let's say we go with Monday.com, right? It's another popular productivity tool. We won't know until we start digging into Monday.com if there's even the capability of doing things like modifying account settings, from the API. I wouldn't suspect that everyone's going to have the same capability that Microsoft and Google do to manage those components. So it's going to be very, very dependent upon the product itself. Our goal really is to go after the applications that don't have any syslogging, and get them on board. I've seen QuickBooks mentioned multiple times in the chat, and that's one of those applications that we selected in 2019 when we first started working on this product to be part of the core. But there was just nothing there to get, and we've recently gone back and looked at it again, and there's no information that provides security insight to pull out of their API. So.
Thank you for answering my question. I'm really grateful. There are 56 chats that probably have tons of questions. I'm John.
You got it.
Other questions?
So Liron, bounce back to your slide for a question from Nico on how they request SaaS apps. Let's go back to that process maybe. And Ryan answered him directly.
You want me to walk through this again, Chip?
I maybe just have that as a backdrop, but Nico, the simple answer is you just can contact your account manager and they'll start that process for you.
Yeah. So you have an application that you want, just again, contact your account manager and we'll put it in the queue. So for everyone that's asking for QuickBooks Online, please sign this petition. We will guarantee once the petition is done, we're going to get it to Intuit and push them to give the information that's necessary to be able to monitor that application, along with many others. So pricing. As I mentioned before, the great news for everyone on this call right now, if you sign an agreement with us, you're getting App Wizard for no incremental cost. After July 1st, for everyone new, for all those MSPs out there that haven't found SaaS Alerts yet, and they're deciding that they're going to start doing this, they will be paying incremental fee. They're going to be paying $50 per application per customer per month. So if you're in this group right now, consider yourself lucky or having the foresight to make a good decision about SaaS Alerts early on, because this is another pricing advantage you're going to have in the marketplace. So next steps, we love you to sign the petition. 2, talk to your account manager about any additional apps you'd like to be considered for App Wizard. We'd love you to join the SaaS MSP call on a go-forward basis. Ask your account manager for details on that. And other than that, we just want to thank you again for all of your support in helping us get to where we are. The collaboration is absolutely essential when trying to build out a platform that covers so much ground. So we can now take the official presentations over. So we're here just to take questions at this point. Any questions?
I'll ask it. Can you
Okay.
begin a public dashboard where we can have votes for apps so that we could other MSPs will have priority applications that I wouldn't even think about, and we could vote for them so we could begin to target the same petition?
So one of the great things about what's happening here is that once someone requests an application and we make it available, it's going to be available to everybody. Right. So as long as if someone asks for it, it's viable, we're going to get it in. So in the short term, we don't necessarily see a need for a voting mechanism because we want to be able to provide it for everyone that asks for one that's viable. We're going to try to get in there.
Jim?
Yes.
Can I share my screen just as an idea though? Because I think Andy brings up a good point in terms of, you think about it, you have 900, as this proliferates. I'm just going to share my screen just for a minute and just as an idea for you and Chip to consider, and then I'll stop talking. So this happens to be Roos Canny. This is a public facing URL. You have to log in to see the specific information. But what canny.io does, and obviously you would make it SaaS Alerts.canny.io, is this way, if, for example, Andy says, hey, I really need this EMR monitored. I think they have a viable API. Here's the API URL. Would you guys look into this further? At least this way, 900 other MSPs would go, okay, well, wow, that's great. I could start thinking about what healthcare clients have that. Or, oh, by the way, wow, that's a great idea. I have this type of EMR, EHR application. And this way also it's being communicated. We're out, because I'd imagine your account managers are going to get inundated with questions. Well, has this one been, what's the status of this one, etc. So this would be an easy mechanism to just push people to go, hey, you want to know the status or what's in the queue or what we're working on, etc., etc. Come here and you'll find out specifically. So just a thought.
No, it's a good thought. In the short term, we're going to try to get to everything until we are inundated. We'll probably need something like that, Andrew. In the short term, we're work through this process. People will see, in the application or on our website when new applications are added, right? And that they're there to be monitored.
Totally get it. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of interest, and I just trying to mitigate multiple requests help that. Like, has this been requested from all your account managers? I don't know. Is this one requested? And then they're kind of constantly coming in. So, but again,
well,
I see a bunch of questions.
Actually built something pretty cool internally for us to aggregate those. So from our CRM and our internal processes, when those requests are made, they will aggregate into a count of how many people are leading towards each one. Feel pretty confident about what Ms. Hanner built, but if it doesn't end up being enough, I'm sure we'll pivot. Yeah. So a lot of questions starting to come in. MyGlue, I think someone asked about MyGlue. MyGlue's already monitored. So you're in good shape on that one already.
Yeah, Matt asked about SIM tools. I think it's a good question. So this was the age-old thing with back with Perch and internet facing APIs. So Chip, let's just say you're pulling in a viable API and you got event logs. Matt, is a question, are we able to then pipe that over from SaaS Alerts into your SIM? Is that the question?
Yes, he answered yes.
Yeah. So I answered Matt's question in line, Andrew, but the answer is you can do that today. We have many, well, not many partners, because not everyone has the capability to do it, but we have, you know, a handful of partners, a dozen or so, who ingest their all of their SaaS Alerts data directly into third-party packages via webhooks. That's been available with our product for, I don't know, 2 years. So we've always offered that as an option.
Okay. Just curious, yes or no, are you guys, are folks out there that do have SIM functionality, are you taking advantage of that? Were you aware that that functionality existed from SaaS Alerts? Just throw out a Y or N.
So to answer Jeremy's question, yes, Jeremy, your account manager can get you that documentation.
Let's see. Jason, yeah. So he's asking about all the above. Documentation on which detections, Chip, was that one answered?
Yeah, so we have we have a complete list that gets updated quite regularly, that our account managers are able to send of. I think we're up to 267. Was that the right count, Leron? Different event detections that we have today. And then obviously those are combined by partners in using Respond into their own combinations, or almost an infinite number of combinations that they can combine those individual events into for creating ILCs within Respond.
What do we need to ask our vendors to inject their data? Okay, so that's the viable API question, I believe, there that Carlos is asking, Chip.
Yep. Yeah. So Carlos, to answer your question, they need to have an API that is structured in such a way that each of their unique customers has the ability to add an authentication process, which typically consists of, you know, the client name, a URL, a client secret, and sometimes a third, you know, another token, depending on how they secure their API. And then we need to be able to call that API specifically for syslog data, and we'll share with them, by the way, you know, what a minimum example of what that syslog data needs to look like. The best thing in the world is if they actually offer the ability to create a webhooks connection themselves, because then we'll just stream all the data in directly, and we don't even need to make any calls. You know, that's the best way to go about it.
Yep. Will there be just in line with Carlos's question, and I'm sure others have similar, like, what does good look like? Will we have something out there that, you know, here's what to ask. This is how to ask. This is what to ask. This is how to send that information back to us to make this process as easy as possible.
Yep, we absolutely will. We'll publish that in the coming weeks. And again, it's a very simplified version of the minimum functionality that would be required from an API in order to give meaningful security data.
Awesome. Andy's asking about Kaseya 1.
Kaseya 1 is a target, Andy?
Yes, because they're using that as an authentication piece to all of their tool set. And I believe that that is something that should be monitored. It is a single sign-on effort.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Is Kaseya 1 done?
Oh, yeah.
It's operational. They're promoting it. They're starting to do AI with it now. So I'm thinking that this has quite a substantial vulnerability potentially.
Probably the same thing with ConnectWise Home, similar kind of a launch pad.
Got it. Well, put it in. If it's got a viable API, we will do it.
Yeah, so Jason Alexander is emphasizing the point about webhooks. Definitely, Jason, webhooks are always a better method versus, you know, timed queries. So we would certainly, if you've got a vendor in mind, you're saying, hey guys, put together this syslog information and we want to pull it out, ask them to create webhooks functionality for you, definitely.
One of the things that comes up for me real quick is the office hours build on for this App Wizard, helping us define these are some great actions to take with App Wizard as far as analyze and respond, because I see that as being how do we adapt and respond to this more rapidly. This skill set is going to be something that has to develop very quickly in our MSP base.
So Jim, as we let more questions, as people kind of digest this all, a few things came to mind. I want and Chip and Jim. Number one, the fact that you guys are allowing that this is free for everybody on here. Why I think that's really critical is, in essence, you're providing a mechanism for inventory of SaaS applications. That really is a huge gap. Like, the only way you really get that today is go to your accounts payable person if you're not running some other type of SaaS aggregation or inventory type tool that's out there. But I want you to comment on that, maybe, Chip. Like, talk about, a blind spot in terms of inventory and third-party risks, number one. And I got a follow-up to this, but what are your thoughts on that? Just in as far as that goes right now.
Yeah,
So
before you answer that, Chip,
go
I
ahead,
just want to
Jim.
make sure people know. I obviously put this up because people were asking for the QR code for the petition. So there it is.
Andrew, can you reframe that for me? Because I was literally responding to Helen's question in chat as you talked through it. So I only caught the last half of it.
Yeah. So if you think about it, there's a massive gap. You think of any framework and inventory, right? We all know how to get on-prem information, right? It's commonly through either your RMM or something like, a network monitoring solution. But there's still a massive gap when it comes to SaaS app. And we know that if you look at any of the threat data this year, web-based applications, identity and web-based, credential and web-based applications are the two prominent TTPs out there. So you guys are actually providing a mechanism to anybody on this call for free to now build their own SaaS inventory. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. That's the goal.
Yeah. Second to that, and any MSP that wants to chime in here, I see it's a huge gap. Second thing is, when we talk about third-party risk, right? These are applications that predominantly we have zero, it's a shared responsibility model. And the third piece is when it opens up the door for you to have a conversation with your customer, because often these are the mission critical applications now that have shifted workloads to SaaS apps, that you can open the door to have business impact analysis conversations, tabletop exercises, etc. of, hey, if this application is supporting 80-90% of your revenue and it goes offline, or you have any type of event related to this, let's talk about your backup procedures. Because again, there's this misnomer that SaaS applications are all the data is backed up magically, right? And it's not, your responsibility. So I see this lending itself to a lot of really good conversations around, like I said, business impact analysis, tabletop exercises, and truly what impacts the business. So what are your thoughts on that, Chip or Jim?
Look, I certainly agree. I think it would be great if every MSP could walk into every one of their customers, do an inventory of all of the business applications that they use, identified all of them that are SaaS, and hopefully at this day and age, that's going to be 90% or more, and say, we're going to cover all of these applications with one fell swoop. We're going to encourage you to use an SSO product or OAuth from Microsoft or Google, to lock down the way you manage authenticating, move you to MFA or move you to hardware tokens for that authentication. We're going to have everything behind this sort of single identity that can be easily tracked. And then we're going to track all your activity across all these apps and correlate it. Like that's the perfect scenario. That's the goal. Then we can provide end-to-end coverage of the whole business interaction that a user account has across all applications. And that's really what we want. I mean, we would love to be able to allow, we'll go back to QuickBooks for a second, because this is one of those things that sticks in my head all the time. Like, if somebody packages up the QuickBooks backup file and downloads it to their local computer and sends it off using Microsoft Exchange, 365 Exchange, we'd love to be able to correlate that and just be able to have the MSP. Maybe it's a nothing event, but maybe they send that off to somebody, that's a competitor, and having the ability to capture that sequence of events is what really gives the platform its ultimate strength.
But Chip, I'll take it as that is huge. But think about this: take any regulated company out there right now, right? Let's take a healthcare app that you start monitoring, right? And I see, for example, data being downloaded, or a financial company and a mortgage application is being downloaded, and then it's being moved, and you're monitoring Slack, and it's being moved that way, and then it's sent out. Like, we could then literally talk to a customer about, did you know this user behavior is going on in your organization? And by the way, this user behavior is actually going to is completely against your compliance. So let's talk about how we're going to lock down, how data is flowing. The other thing that we didn't talk about, and we probably don't have time today, is insider threat. This is something you guys caught, even before this, through movement of mass amounts of data through one of the organizations. So I see this having mass appeal to so many different facets of the business.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, it really, look, what we've tried to do so far with SaaS Alerts is provide visibility in the end as to what is occurring with accounts. And I'm always so careful to say accounts and not users, because there isn't that one-to-one ratio, and there are times when an unmonitored account is the most dangerous. So it's important to look at that. This is going to influence our reports roadmap over 2024. I'm sure our MSP community is going to come back to us and say, hey, help us focus in even more. Let's say on these correlated events that go on between apps. File, was created here, downloaded there, moved over to here, and shared somewhere else. That's all data that you can pull, you can extract today out of SaaS Alerts using our Analyze feature. Some of that's going to show up today in the reports in the top 10, bad actors that comes from our cybersecurity assessment report. But we'll refine that over time, and I can imagine a time where, we allow an MSP partner to select from a couple of different apps that their customers are using and produce a correlation report. Just show me everything that moved around. I want to see the picture of how this user moved data from one place to another. That's the ultimate goal here, is to allow for creating that kind of mapping and even making it visual.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, let's get you in line before your audit happens, so that, you actually can, talk about the things that you put in place, right, to mitigate this from happening again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to answer some questions. So there will be essentially a shadow IT report coming. We don't need an agent like other companies do or have to accomplish that. Now with App Wizard, we're going to be able to do, basically provide that for you. Today, we already know, for instance, someone's logging in to an application, but using Microsoft as from a OAuth perspective, we see all of that through API. So Leron and I actually talked about a shadow IT report just yesterday.
May I make an observation that something like UI trends would be great to be able to monitor through SaaS Alerts. The fact that it's running automation against cloud applications for many organizations, and I happen to know them, a lot of them in healthcare, to be able to monitor these robots, these AI, to make sure that they're doing what they say they're doing. There's another value add right there.
Right. Someone else asked about whether or not multiple people can sign the petition from the same company. Yes. Ultimately, we want to get as many folks
Jim,
as possible.
Somebody just tried for my company, said only one entry is allowed.
Oh, really?
That's just your company, Gary.
Yeah.
Gary, that's just your company.
I understand he wants it, but I'm trying to help.
No, to be clear, Gary, for the sake of that form that you're going to leverage, that the account manager is going to share, if you enter more than one in the form, it's going to mess up the form. So please submit one request at a time.
Well, no. I forwarded the link to other people.
For the petition. Just,
for the
yeah.
petition.
No, honestly.
Okay.
And that may be a setting issue. So let me go back and look at it and I can see if I can make that change.
No problem. Just let us know and we'll have people try again. Thanks.
Super, thanks.
Jim, one thing that you didn't mention when you handed it to Liron, you know, we've got a lot of people on, you know, the usuals know who Liron is, but maybe, you know, quick overview for the awesome work that he and Chip's team do.
So that's how I was actually going to finish today, Andrew.
Well, I was just setting you up, Jim.
I appreciate that. We have 5 minutes left, but I'll say it now. This is something that we've been talking about as an organization, like I said, for 2 years. We've been in development for just over a year on it. This has been one of our guiding principles because it's something that we believe really strongly in as an organization. And the amount of work goes into something like this, and not just work, but level of commitment and dedication that goes into pulling something like this off is dramatic. And you know, Chip and Liron and Pavlo and the host of developers that we've had on this, you know, for the better part of the last year, deserve a ton of credit because I do believe, you know, with every ounce in me, that this is going to end up changing the game. We are changing this industry and giving MSPs the ability to do things for their clients that otherwise right now would not be able to do. And I'm just humbled to be able to be part of it. So, you know, thanks to Chip and Liron and the rest of the development team for being able to pull this off in the time frame that we said we were going to. There's always going to be more that we can do, and we will do more. There's a lot of folks on this call that have been with us for a long time, Andrew, as you know, and you've seen we started out with one module less than 3 years ago, looking at 25 events. Today we have over 267 events. We've got 3 modules with a ton of functionality and manage. There's a lot more we're going to do, but today is about celebrating what we've been able to accomplish by getting App Wizard out when we said we were going to do it.
It's huge. Congrats.
Thank you.
Jim, so now that people are going to call account managers, start asking questions, how to get set up on App Wizard, what are your thoughts on next week? We kind of go through, I don't know if Liron is open to it. Can we go through, hey, these are the ones that are getting requested. This is how we're approaching these, maybe the top ones that you're seeing. And then we'll go back into wins, and we'll also have our normal, collaboration and learning piece, Jim. But do you think we could start there?
Yeah. I mean,
We can.
End of the day, it's more Liron and Chip than me. I can say yes all day long. They're the ones doing the work on this one.
Jim will say yes to anything if you don't know that already.
That's fair. That's fair, Chip.
So we've had for quite a while. I think we've been quiet about it, but we have a community.saasalerts.com site out there where people actually jump in and upvote and downvote different enhancement requests that we have. And I think we're going to use that moving forward for this, the same sort of democratized version of what people really want. Mm-hmm. It is important to note, back to Liron's slide of the process, there's definitely a democracy component of this, but there is also a dictatorship element of this in the sense that, when the democracy votes and we have all of our partners that won some product and are jumping up and down, this has got to be the next one we work on, guys. When it gets down to brass tacks and our engineering team reports back to Liron and myself, guys, there's no there. There's just nothing there. Then we're obviously going to move on to something else. I think we're going to be very transparent with the community about those blockers. And hopefully we can harness the grassroots energy of the SaaS Alerts partner base to nudge vendors in the right direction. Andy, I know the EMR space is particularly important to you. I also know that that's a particularly fussy place from the standpoint of the developers there, for good reason. You know, they have lots and lots of reasons because of the data that they're protecting to be difficult about letting people have access to it. So, but we're all going to work through these things together. This is going to be a group effort. We're trying to just create the tools to give the community the way to get the message out there and improve how we monitor people's business apps.
Fantastic. All right, Jim, we made it top of the hour.
That's top of the hour.
I hope everybody joins us next week for the SaaS call as we continue this.
I think we're at 168 today. That's about 100 more than we usually have. What are the chances we get 168 next week, Andrew?
I don't know. Well, maybe we'll have to say something about you coming in as Lou Ferrigno. And I think
I'll paint myself green. No, thank you everyone for attending today. More importantly, thank you for all your support. We can't do any of this without all of you. So thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you for giving us the product as an add-on. We love it. Keep it coming.
That's right.
Thank you.
Right. These are great changes.
Thanks all.
Everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.